Hello and welcome back to David Anderson Longbow Arrows. We are now on video 4. This is the weights and measures. This is the one you've all been waiting for. I know you have. Lots of people have commented already and said, when is video 4 coming out? It's coming out right now, right today. I'm recording it right now. It'll be on YouTube this afternoon or this evening once I've finished the editing. So in video 3, we talked about checking the arrow shafts for straightness, and we also looked at how we can fix any bends in the shaft itself to make them that little bit perfect again. So this video we're going to look at something which we call weights and measures. Now what I mean by that is two things, and these are very, very important to make it wooden arrows. And this is something that you don't see, or if you do, it's not explained very well. So I'm going to break the trend here just a little bit. I might get told off, okay, by the fledgling community, but here goes. Now, firstly, our American and to some extent European cousins, and some British videos as well, that you may have watched on YouTube or on the internet about making arrows, right? How many of them have talked about spine weight? Do you know what spine weight is? Well, spine weight, or alternatively known as deflection of the arrow, okay, is something like this. When you get your arrow, it is actually the bendiness, okay? Now, the reason why you won't ever see this mentioned on videos is because, particularly with the Americans, when they're talking about their longbow, which as we determined in video 0 is actually a flat bow, because it has a shelf or an arrow rest, the arrow doesn't have to bend. So if they have a 40-pound flat bow, the spine weight of the arrow, the bendiness or the deflection, is equal to 40 pounds. That's why they don't talk about it. Now, this is what we call the archer's paradox. It's a bit difficult to explain. When you're holding your longbow and you have an arrow knocked, okay, the arrow will be pointing to the left-hand side of the handle. Okay, this is assuming you're a right-handed archer. Now what has to happen is that when the arrow leaves the bow, okay, as I said before, the back end of the bow moves before the front, so it bends, it flexes, okay, so it will do that, and then as it goes around the handle, it then flexes the other way, and it keeps on doing that until eventually it straightens up in flight. Okay, so that is what the archer's paradox is. Okay, this is why when we are looking at a longbow, we want to adjust the spine weight of the arrow shaft to meet the spine weight of the bow, okay, or rather the bow weight of the bow, as in what you're pulling. Okay, so if you have a look on your bow, you will generally see some numbers on there, and those numbers could say something like 35 pounds at 28 inches, or 30 or 35 at 20. It could be 40 at 26. It could be a series of numbers. Okay, now what that actually means is, if we take, for example, 35 at 28, what that means is that the bow draw weight, okay, so the power needed to pull the bow, okay, at 28 inches, okay, so that's your draw length. So from the belly of the bow to your reference point at 28 inches, the power needed to pull the bow is 35 pounds. Okay, so you might see 40 at 29, in which case it's 40 pounds at 29 inches. So hopefully you follow that. Okay, now what you then have to think of is, if the bow was made 35 at 28, okay, but your draw length is actually only 27 inches, okay, you need to take 2 pounds off. Okay, so either way you go, okay, for each inch you're taking off 2 pounds. So if your draw length then was 27 inches and the bow was 35 at 28, you're actually going to be pulling the 33 pounds. Okay, so you've got 1 inch less, 2 pounds less. Okay, and conversely, if you go the other way, if your draw length is 29 inches, then what you're actually doing is you're pulling 37 pounds, okay, because you're pulling more energy into the limbs, you're pulling harder on those limbs at a longer draw length. Okay, so I hope that helps. Okay, I'm going to pop on the screen here an image which is going to show you the bow weight versus the draw length, okay, which hopefully will give it a little bit more meaning for you. So stick up on the screen now. There we go. And I'm also going to put this image on the website as well. So if you go to www.archer-development.co.uk, it's going to be on there. Now, we know the bow weight that we have. Okay, we need to match this. Okay, so this is the first half of the term spine and weight matched. Okay, you may have heard of this. So what happens is, when we talk about spine and weight match, the first bit we're talking about is the spine, okay, the bendiness. Okay, we're going to match that bendiness to the bow, and to do that we start off using a spine weight chart, which comes up on the screen now. Okay, you can have a look at this. I'll also put a description, put a link to it in the description below. Now what you're basically doing is you are looking for your bow draw weights down the left hand side and your draw length along the top, and where the two meet down, where they cross in the grid, that will give you the range of arrow spine weights more suited to your bow. Okay, so for example, if we look here for a 34 pound bow at 28 inches, this would result in arrow spine weights of between 25 and 30 pounds. Okay, the general rule of thumb, and as a starting point, is to go about 5 pounds lower than your bow weight. Okay, it is a starting point. Remember what we said in video 2 when I said fletching is an experiment? Okay, well here it starts to do just that. So if we take 34 pounds and then select 29 pound arrow spine, 5 pounds less, okay, then that is where we're going to be about starting. Okay, so we're looking at probably around about 29 pound spine. Okay, so the bendiness here needs to be about 29 pounds. Okay, having said that, you might find that a 27 pound spine works better. So when you're first starting out making arrows, what I would suggest you do is get lots and lots and lots of shafts, make arrows different lengths, different spine weights, different grain weights. We'll come on to grain weight in a second. Okay, and test them all from your bow. Okay, and then when you find one that works, make a whole set from that template. Now, what you will end up with, of course, at the end of this is you're going to end up with hundreds and hundreds of arrows, which is going to be absolutely perfect in the event of a zombie apocalypse. Right, how do we measure the spine weight of our arrows? Now, this is a very, very good thing. There's two methods really. Okay, so the first one is, and we've got second camera set up of this side, which is going to be viewing our spine tester. Now this is the original spine tester made by Heritage Longbows. I'll put a link to it in the description, and you can go and buy one. Now the way that it works is we're going to rest our arrow shaft on the bar there, like so. We're going to adjust this bar so that it reads 0 on that line there. Okay, there's a gauge here, and what I'll do is I'll move the camera around slightly so that you can see this in action. Now what we then do is we then take a 2 pound weight, which is then hung in the center like so, and then you'll see that the arm here moves upwards. Okay, and this has a scale up here, and this is showing that this particular arrow shaft is 31 pounds. Now let me just move this around so you can see. Okay, so You just turn that around so that you can see the scale on the side there, and that one there measuring 31 pounds. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense. And then along the bottom here you can see this is the 0 line here. Okay, right, brilliant. Let's put that back to there. Now, what I generally do then is make a note on the shaft here. I've got my pencil hiding. So this one here, 31 pounds. So I'll put a 31 on the shaft. I write it just on the end, 31. Now, what we now need to do is, if we're using a device like this and we're using any kind of spine testing device, the first thing we need to do is make sure that before we place our arrow on the tester is identify where the grain is. Okay, so the grain on this particular shaft here is that way there, which you probably might not be able to see because these are spruce shafts, very light. But if I was to pull this one here out and have a look, okay, bring that up close and twist it around that way, you can see the vertical spines running up and down there. Okay, now when you're placing the arrow on the spine tester, okay, this grain has to be upright, it has to be facing the top, okay, because that is the strongest part of the arrow. If you did it the other way, this side here is called the rift or the flower, okay, that is the weakest part. Okay, so if you did it on that, you will not get a true reading of what the actual spine weight is for that shaft. Okay, so grain has to be facing upwards. Okay, good. So once you've done that, you then mark that one there. The next thing you then need to do, what I tend to do is I also get my notebook, my pencil. What I tend to do is actually I would stick a number 1 on that shaft. I would put number 1 on my notebook and I would put 31 pounds. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do, if I just twist this around a little bit, you see all these shafts here we're going to measure. The next bit is weighing them. Okay, now this little device here, this is just what we call grain scales. Okay, you can see that in the other camera there. The little red blob on top is just to hold the shaft. Now we're going to turn it on. Okay, wait for it to 0. Now I always measure these in grains, okay, or GN. Some people also measure it in grams. Grains to me is far more accurate. Okay, and all we're going to do is just rest the arrow on there. Okay, and this reads off at 305 grains. What I'm going to do, if I pick that up, can we get that one on there? Can you see that? There we go, there, 305.6 grains. Okay, right, let's go back. I ought to get one of those cameras that's fixed to my head, shouldn't I? So I could just go like that and everything would just be there. But anyway, but you'll see. Anyway, I don't use these anymore. But so what we're going to do, 31 pounds. I'm going to write down there 305.6 grain. Okay, that's arrow number 1 done. Okay, arrow number 1 then goes into a box, and then I move on to arrow 2. I'm going to turn this off because, and put that away. Put the £2 weight aside, okay, and the spine tester we're also going to put away. Because as I said, I don't use those. I used to use it all the time. What I now use is this little device here. Okay, so I'm going to have to move the camera again in a second to show you what this device does. This is a bare paw arrow analyzer. Okay, if you have some deep pockets, I think they're around about 240 quid, something like that. Okay, but they are the bee's knees. Okay, fantastic. What it does is, can you see that? Yes, you can just see my laptop there in camera 2. Okay, and actually if I zoom in on that, can I zoom in? Oh, there we go. Oh, camera's gone a bit funny. Okay, zoom in on that there. Okay, what you can see there is the software on my laptop that comes with the device. Now, this device, this arrow analyzer, is linked by USB cable to my laptop, and what I basically do is I turn it on. Okay, and on the screen, as we zoom back on here, let me just bring back onto this bit here for you so you can see here. Okay, you can see there it is there. Okay, so we've got this little display on here which now is asking me to place the arrow. Okay, now I'm not going to worry too much about this. What will happen is if I place an arrow on here, I'm not going to do too much, just so you can see. You'll then see underneath it, hopefully, there we go, in the top corner, it says that the grain weight is 285 grains. Okay, and make sure the grain is facing upwards. Now if I push the grain down, you'll see that this shaft is actually 35.8 pounds at 285 grains. Okay, now absolutely brilliant. What this can also then do, let me flick that back round. Okay, if I then turn this arrow shaft 180 degrees and push it down again, okay, it then comes up with another weight which is 40.8, and it then gives me an average spine weight of this arrow. Okay, now if I zoom in on the screen, try and get this back in again. Oh, there you can see at the top it's actually sent that information straight to the screen. Okay, now let's come out just a little bit on there. What I'm now going to do is, and I apologize that this is a little bit sloped. When I take the arrow off, I don't know if you can just see actually there, maybe I just need to zoom in a bit more. You see we now have this top line. Okay, so this top line here on the screen is now telling me arrow number 1, grain 285. It actually tells me it's 18.5 grams as well. Okay, which is good. It tells me the ASTM, the ammo is 40.8. Okay, it has stored that information straight into my computer. I don't have to write anything down now. It's all there. So what I'm going to do is bring that one there back, take arrow number 2 on there, 297 grain, spine weight 38.8, turn it around 180 degrees, spine weight again 36.8, gives me now an average. Okay, take that one off. Okay, arrow number 2 now up on the screen. Okay, and this makes measuring arrows extremely quick. Next one, 295 grain, 35.4, turn it around 180 degrees, bend again, 37.1. That gives me an arrow of 37.1 pounds. Okay, so this is using the bare paw arrow analyzer. As I said, it's a fantastic device. Okay, now once you've done all of your arrows and you've spine weighted them all, okay, and you've grain weighted them all, okay, what you're then doing is you're trying to work out what is the best spine and what is the best grain weight for your arrow shaft. Okay, so if, as we said, we are looking for, if we're doing 35-pound arrows, if our bow was 35 pounds draw weight, we want to be looking for about 30 pounds spine weight for that arrows. Okay, now it's difficult to get 12 arrows that will all say 30 pound. Okay, so what I tend to do is I allow sort of like a pound either way. So if I want 30, I'll accept 31, I'll also accept 29. Okay, how you do it is entirely up to you. Some Fletchers will do it up to £5 difference. Now to me, £5 can make an awful lot of difference in an arrow that is shot. Okay, next thing we're going to do is look at our grain weight. So when on the screen here we said our grain weight was 295, 297. Right, this is going to be the fun bit. The grain weight of your arrow, the overall weight of your finished arrow. Let me go and grab a finished arrow up here. There we go, we'll use this one. Okay, so the overall weight, point, shaft, feathers and nock, okay, should be no more than 10% of your bow draw weight. Okay, so what I mean by that in terms of grains, what I mean by that is if your bow draw weight is 40 pounds, okay, the total weight of your arrow should be no more than 400 grain. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so take the bow weight, multiply it by 10, and that will give you what it needs to be. Okay, if you are making flight arrows and you want your arrows to go a little bit further, then you can go down as low as 9 times, so about 360 grain. Okay, so no less than 360 but no more than 400. Now this will be very, very dependent upon what you're going to do with the arrows, which is what I said right at the beginning in video 0, is what are you going to do with these arrows. So with if we assume, for example, that we're going to do a 400 grain total weight, okay, what you need to do is get your feathers, get your point, get your nock, put it all together and weigh it. Okay, now generally speaking, 3 feathers and a nock is going to weigh about 30 grains. Okay, I know that from experience, but it was so big as I measured it once. Don't tell me. Okay, but the other part is your point. Okay, so points come in sort of like 70 grain, 100 grain, 125 grain. You might even get some down to about 30 if they're aluminium points. Okay, so you have to weigh up all of that together. Say, right, this is how much weight I'm going to be adding to the shaft. Okay, which means that you then have to take that weight off when you're trying to find your shaft. So say for example using a 70 grain point and it's 30 grains for the other for the feathers and the nock and the for the feathers and the nock, you're talking about 100 grains. Okay, so if your shaft at the moment is 300 grains, okay, you have to take off 100 grain to bring that down to 200, okay, in order to add the 100 back on to make it 300. Does that make sense? Okay, so when you're weighing your shafts, and if we take this one up here for example, so we've got one at 295. Okay, so if I just take 295 grain shaft, okay, add on 100 grains, that's going to bring me to 395. Okay, which is great if I want a 400 grain shaft. Okay, but what that doesn't do is it doesn't take into account the fact that my draw length is only 26 inches, okay, and I'm going to need to cut off 4 inches off this arrow shaft. Right, so how much does 4 inches give you? How much does that weigh? Okay, when you cut them off, you get bits of shaft like that. Okay, now I've actually gone through and I've weighed these. You can find this, there's a little chart that's in my book that tells you what they all are. On a spruce shaft here, for every inch that you cut off, you're actually cutting off about 9.8 grains worth of wood. Okay, so cutting off 4 inches, for example, is going to cut off about 40 grains. Okay, so now if you take the 40 grains off that 395, that's then going to bring it down to about 355. Okay, which is, if I wanted a 360 grain shaft, that's where it's going. That's very, very close. Okay, it's a little bit technical. You are reverse engineering it. Okay, it's a bit difficult to try and get your head around to begin with, but you'll eventually get there once you realize, of course, that you still got to cut bits of wood off in order to get the grain weight that you need. So what you then end up with is a 35-pound spined arrow, okay, at 360 grain weight. Okay, that then becomes a spine and weight matched arrow to your bow. Okay, as I said, spine weight I usually go a pound either way. Grain weight no more than about 10 grains or so either way. If you can get it down to 5 grains, absolutely perfect, but no, not really any more than about 10 grains. Okay, so the other thing to bear in mind is you can go less than 9 times. You can go down to 8. I've even seen some going down to 6, but the problem that you have is if your arrow shaft spine weight is too low and the grain weight is too low, what will happen is when you shoot that arrow, it will shatter, and then you'll get splinters all through your hands, and it'll probably smash back into your face and all sorts. So no less than 9 times, 8 at an absolute push. I've never done anything at 8. I wouldn't recommend it. 9 is the lowest I'd ever go. Anyway, so now that we have a set of shafts, we have 12 shafts, all at the right spine weight, all at the right grain weight. We're now going to cut them down. We're going to prep the wood. We're going to stain it, and that's what we're going to do in video 5. And I hope you enjoyed this one. If you want any clarification, please leave a comment. Thank you. On to the next video.